I um I had another bad night, and I just couldn't get up at 5 o'clock or at 6 o'clock or at 7 o'clock. But Jade's Jade's poll is interesting because I think the first two options are kind of connected. And the connection is a phrase. I guess it's Paul Erdős, who is the only other phrase I know of Erdős. A mathematician is a machine for turning coffee into theorems. But the second phrase that I just read today, about, I suppose it's about probabilistic combinatorics. The phrase was like finding hay in a haystack, and it happens because of exponential growth. When you add independent points to a phase space, if you think of some very simple graphic file format, not something like PNG or GIF or JPEG that have lots of compression built in. I'm thinking of simple portable things like the portable bitmap file formats that were used in early Unix. You just represent an image as a list of pixel values, and all you really need to know to read the file are the dimensions so that you can align the rows and the columns. You need to know the dimensions and the number of bits and some sort of color mapping. And in the case of a black and white bitmap, that's just a trivial mapping. So most strings of bits are valid bitmaps, and there's probably a way to design a file format so that every string of bits is a valid bitmap and represents some image. And that means every string of coin tosses that you make represents a visual image. And if the strings are very, very long and the image is on a very fine scale, you can represent quite a lot of you can produce a quite convincing black and white newspaper style photograph from one of these bit strings. And if you think about the problem of compressing, or the problem of yeah, the problem of image compression is to find some many of those are indistinguishable from each other in terms of their meaning. There are a lot of different ways. If you take a black and white picture from the New York Times in 1914, there are a lot of different ways to represent that black and white image as a string of bits. And they're all in some sense the same image. And in a way, data compression or compression of image formats is just choosing some subspace of the whole space and indexing the elements within it, and then representing images by their index within that larger space, so that very large parts of that space are not you don't distinguish between them. And there's a little rant in David Mackay's Inference book about magical compression schemes that claim to be able to achieve better than the is it the Shannon? I haven't got the vocabulary is not in core. It's there's a an assumption that's made in those arguments, and and Mackay makes this assumption, which is that every representation is interpretable, contains all the context for its interpretation. It explicitly doesn't allow open systems where the context for interpreting the encoded data is in the system. In other words, imagine a whole lot of people sharing dictionaries and updating each other's dictionaries, and then exchanging compressed data messages referring to different versions of their dictionaries. So you can again think of this community of hackers who have built a system which maintains dictionaries and exchanges messages using those same dictionaries and that same dictionary-based compression. And then exchanges actual new data and updates their dictionaries as the messages flow around the network. That kind of data compression is not restricted by the whatever the term is, the Shannon limit, because it's an open, the interpretation of the message is open. I haven't got the right math. I need to think about this and read a bit more and get the mathematical terms right, but a message, to be meaningful when it passes from one part of the system to the other, needs to have, in some sense, an equivalent well, there's got to be some kind of natural transformation on the objects and functors in these categories that people have. If your system maintains that from the start, then I don't see that there's any limit to the amount of the degree of compression that you can achieve. But if that system is closed and it has to communicate with another closed system, then that Shannon limit will apply. I'm sorry, that's clear as mud. But really, a data compression scheme is just a language which restricts the kinds of things that you might want to say. But human beings seem to have this ability to communicate about their language and join these closed systems together. So here's some piece of art, I think. Yesterday there's a pile of bricks at the end of this track, about 50, 100 meters along there, and somebody's rescued some of the bricks. They're quite nice bricks. They're all broken because they wouldn't have been thrown away otherwise, but they put them in the cardboard boxes, and they've carried them this far, and those boxes are heavy. I can't lift that, but evidently somebody has got a technique where they can lift that much onto their back and walk. But if they only got this far, I'm not sure the technique's really worth that much. But it just seems to me so hopeless. The guy's only trying to reuse some reusable bricks, and somebody at some point has tried before. There's a discarded one dropped down there. And there's a railway track here, but there are no cars on it, and nobody has a portable kind of hand cart that you can pick up, put on that track and use as a... And it would probably be illegal, even though the track's only used once a week or once every 2 weeks. And there is there's a little motor rail cart that comes past. Before the track is used by the train, it has to be cleared of rubbish and stuff. So they do a pass with the little motor cart, and then the main freight comes with all the barley for the wheat, whatever that is that they use at the brewery. As far as I know, the brewery is the only user of this track. I don't know who it's owned by. Some of these tracks have passed into the hands of companies and people who are supposed to maintain them, and I don't know, I guess they lease them to each other, or I don't know how it works.